Today I'm going to talk about profits in the rare book business. Now, I'm not sure that some of my rare book colleagues would be thrilled that I'm discussing this publicly. So if I do not appear on any future videos on my channel, rest assured they have come after me with pitchforks and particularly sharp number 2 pencils and have taken down my channel, or I just didn't get enough subscribers. In the business world today, profits are really revered. The greater the profit margin, the more successful a business person you are considered. But the rare book business is unique, and I think you have to be cognizant of where you get your books from. Now, I only can talk about, of course, profit margins from a personal perspective, but many times I am offered books from individuals or estates, and they are not aware of the inherent value of the books that they are selling. And you really have to try to be a fair, reasonable, and transparent dealer. This is very important for the long-term success of your business. It's for your reputation, and also because naturally you want to be ethical and be able to sleep at night on your 800-count Egyptian pillows. As an antiquarian, I'm curious about how profits were viewed throughout history. Aristotle famously viewed profits with suspicion. He believed that items had an inherent value, and if you added something onto that, it would only be dubious. Duns Scotus, the Scottish medieval philosopher, took a more liberal economic approach. He could appreciate the value added in items. For instance, if you were moving, let's say, goods from Smurf Village A to medieval Smurf Village B, he would recognize the transportation costs and effort involved in that could translate into profit. Also in medieval times, of course, there were many laws and prohibitions against usury, and while profits are not necessarily usurious, I think excessive profits would often bump into those laws and could lead to, let's say, uncomfortable living conditions. Let's talk about 3 books. The first book is, like Duns Scotus, value added, something I've discovered in the book that can lead to very large profit margins. The second book is a book that I purchased recently at auction, and I'll touch on at least why I find it difficult to sell at high prices, books that I've recently purchased at public auctions. And the third book is a book that I purchased privately and what I paid and what I intend to sell it at. So let's talk about the first book, which is a nice little volume in a worn but lovely 1540s or 1550s German blind-stamped pigskin binding. And I purchased this volume on eBay for $75 years ago, and it's been in the closet since. And it's a wonderful little volume on Cicero with some extremely funny woodcut initials in it. Now, how did I buy such a charming antiquarian volume for only $75, you ask? Well, it is unfortunately missing the title page, and as I've said many times before, when you have a fatal condition flaw like that, it drastically reduces its monetary value in the antiquarian world. But this volume does have some redeeming qualities, like many people today. It is replete with annotations in a contemporary hand. So by contemporary, I mean handwriting close to the period when the book was printed. And secondly, it has some very intriguing provenance, ownership marks. It says, from the library of Johannes Agricola, 1559, and a book dealer in the 1970s here has written in pencil, very tantalizingly, curious annotations possibly in Martin Luther's hand. Now, I did a quick and cursory examination of the handwriting in the book with known samples of Luther's hand online, and they do not match, unfortunately. I would love to put that completely to rest by knowing the actual date of the book, but I don't have the title page, and normally I can look in WorldCat and put the page count as well as some physical characteristics of the book, and sort of find the exact edition. I was not able to in this case, because if I could show naturally that this book was printed in the 1550s, and I think Luther died in 1548, I could conclusively put to rest that the annotations are his, unless, of course, he rose from the grave to write in the book, which would make it even more valuable. It is, however, even if that is not in Luther's hand, from Johannes Agricola's library. Now, Johannes Agricola himself was an important German reformer. He was a friend of Martin Luther and later became an antagonist of Luther. The reason he became an antagonist is he delved into the heresy of antinomianism, which, if you don't have your heretic page a day calendar open, is the belief that if you accept salvation by grace, a tenet of Lutheran theology, then you do not have to closely adhere to the Mosaic laws, the 10 Commandments. And when I start talking about theology, I sort of start to feel a little bit like Steve Martin in A Leap of Faith. And therefore, sin and evil cannot be a hindrance to salvation, and you are left with a theology of licentiousness. Something to that effect. But, as I said, this is very intriguing provenance, and it's much more likely that some or all of the annotations are by Agricola himself, although I have not closely studied that yet. So what is a interesting volume with annotations like this worth in the marketplace today? It's probably something I would price at about $1,500 or let's say $2,000, and having only paid $75 for it, what is that? 2,000 divided by 75, about 2,600% markup or so. So quite a home run if indeed I do sell it for that. But after hearing those numbers, before you all run out and decide to quit your day jobs and become rare book dealers, and I should have said this from the beginning, becoming rich in the rare book business is actually not easy. They have a joke that says, how do you make money? And you buy a book for $1, you sell it for $2. You buy a book for $1, you sell it for $2, and you patiently wait for your rich uncle to drop dead and leave you $10 million. Moving on to book number 2, a book I bought at auction. Now, I recently paid $350 for this, plus the juice. And by juice, I mean excessive auction commissions and not pineapple or coconut juice, which are becoming excessively priced if you shop at Whole Foods today. This book was printed in Rome in 1698, and it is on the imperial bronze coins and medals that belong to Cardinal Gasparo, who was a well-known coin collector of the period. Actually, coin collecting, I think, goes back to the time of Petrarch, who was considered the first coin collector. It was adopted by aristocracy thereafter, from everyone from Henry IV to the Emperor Maximilian, all of whom wanted to show their wealth and erudition, as well as their love of the iconography of the antique, which was important in the Renaissance. This particular copy is in a nice 18th century, early neoclassical binding, and it has also some nice provenance with it. It was once owned by the Duc de Tallard, who was a famous antiquities collector in his own right. His collection was actually auctioned in the 1750s in Paris, and you can even see the catalog, I think, on Google Books today. A reason we love Google Books. Why I bought this volume and what I love about it, however, it is a work of typographical elegance and splendor. It is really a remarkable work of printing. I'm especially in love with the lovely headpieces and tailpieces, many of which are quite unusual. They were actually engraved by Pietro Santo Bartoli, who was a well-known engraver of antiquarian subjects and antiques. So quite a lovely book. Now, I said I paid $350 odd for this. I'm sort of limited what I can charge for this book, partially because I just bought it at auction. When you buy at auction today, many times the records are publicly available in many databases online like Rare Book Hub, or you just have to type the title into Google and people can see what you paid and where you got it. And I don't want to say that collectors necessarily will begrudge you a profit, but they will begrudge you an excessive profit if they see you just purchased it. So I'm sort of limited in what I can ask for this. I will probably mark it twice what I paid for a 100% markup or a 50% profit margin there if I sell it. I would remind you as well that bookseller asking prices are not necessarily the prices they get for things, of course. That also hurts profit margins. I'm in the ABAA and I have to certainly respect a reciprocal trade discount with other dealers, which lowers the margins on books. And even collectors can try to negotiate with me, although I will say I tend to be fair in my prices and I'm not negotiating too much lately. Finally, let's move on to the third book here, which is a book that I bought privately. This is House of Pomegranates, printed in 1891 by Oscar Wilde. It is the second book of fairy tales of Oscar Wilde, I think after the Happy Prince. And it is an important book in the aesthetic movement in England during the period because it really unites three artists in that movement, Oscar Wilde, as well as the book designers and artists Charles Shannon and Charles Ricketts, who lived together as a homosexual couple in Lansdowne House and operated the Vale Press. And I think Oscar Wilde once said it was the least boring house in all of London. And it is just a beautiful book. Now, when you look up a book like this, and it's very condition dependent, this is a fragile book that you often find soiled. At auction in the records, you can get anywhere from like $600 to $900 or so, sometimes a little more for exceptional copies. And I think I paid $700, so towards the lower end of that scale, privately to someone, but not an unfair price. I also like one more thing about this book is the book plates here, especially this one of Roy Knorr with a man climbing up a ladder, which is derivative from a William Blake engraving from the Gates of Paradise. Now this, as I said, is a really lovely book that appeals to me. The end papers are absolutely, utterly charming. They show snails and quails. They were designed by Charles Ricketts. Actually, that sort of reminds me of a nursery rhyme, what a bookseller's made of: snails and quails and H.P. Lovecraft tales. So what would I price this book at? Well, I would first check to see what other dealers are selling them for on AbeBooks or Via Libre and price my copy accordingly. But I think I would sort of be limited to charging about twice what I paid for this after that, after looking at those prices, or about $1,400, or again, 100% markup or a 50% profit margin if it sells. So overall, at the end of the year, when I look at my QuickBooks, I'm quite happy if I can make generally a 40% margin on my sales. I consider that reasonable, fair, and good. I will say something that dovetails with profit margins, which is a problem in the rare book business, and that especially new dealers should be very aware of, and that is inventory and cash flow. There's nothing more important to a successful business than cash flow. And of course, when you buy 10 books, a few of them sell, and the rest sit on shelves for months, if not years. And a lot of the profit that you make from books naturally has to immediately go into new stock at sometimes ever increasing prices. So the rare book business may be profitable, but it's certainly not one of the most profitable businesses in the world. You should go into software or become a hedge fund manager, but it is a very enjoyable business. And I hope that you will look at some more of my videos in the future to gain some more insights into the rare book business.